Hi, I'm Willard Scott of the Today Show, and do I have a video for you? It's about beautiful horses, beautiful scenery, and beautiful people. What else could you want for an entertaining film? And best of all, this isn't fiction, it's all true. This is the story of country's Reminisce Hitch, the first ever six-horse hitch to walk across the width of America, along rural roads and among rural people, from Kennebunkport, Maine to San Diego, California. Think people don't feel this hitch is special? You take a look at them. Folks of all ages showed up with the hundreds everywhere along the cross-country route to see and pet what they began regarding as their hitch and their horses. They regarded the crew as special, too, particularly driver David Helmuth and his wife, Vikki. They got married during the trip and then took one of the most unusual honeymoons ever, all the way across America, looking over the backs of 6 champion Belgians. Now that's a real honeymoon trip, folks. But hey, listen, this trip wasn't just theirs. It's yours, too, and everyone else who wants to come along with us. We're going to take you to David and Vikki's wedding, attended by over 15,000 people, and then make you feel like you're sitting on the seat of this custom-made wagon as it rumbles along from state to state behind these huge 6 horses, which were named the #1 six-horse hitch in America just before this trip began. You'll be with us as these horses splash in the Atlantic on the East Coast and in the Pacific off the West Coast to officially make this an ocean-to-ocean trip. And you'll celebrate with David, Vikki, and the crew at the end of this 16-month, 3,600-mile trip, along with the 5,000 people who showed up to share the moment. What a glorious trip this was. But first, let's go back to the beginning to tell what this trip was really all about. For those of you who viewed the first video of Country's Reminisce Hitch, which covered the first half of this trip, we hope you'll sort of bear with us for a few moments while we repeat some of those earlier scenes to familiarize others with this trip and its purpose. And then we'll all be on the same page, see? So we can enjoy the rest of this trip together, okay? The whole thing began back in February of 1993 on a small farm in northeast Iowa. The driver is David Helmuth, an ex-Iowa Amish farm boy who was chosen to quarterback this challenging effort. Early each morning, in cool and sometimes frigid weather, the horses were worked out, just 2 at a time, so this talented teamster could pay closer attention to each individual horse, or as David says, to help us think alike. Finally, the training was finished. The team and crew were ready, and publisher Reiman took a few minutes to explain why he and his company decided to sponsor this trip.
I've always loved horses, especially draft horses, which stems from growing up on an Iowa farm. And I kind of grew up during that in-between era of agriculture that is in between horses and tractors. And my dad had a team of horses around on our farm long after other people had gone to high-powered equipment. And I loved to ride up in front of the wagon with my dad. And now and then he'd hand me the lines to those horses, and I guess I've been sort of holding on to those lines and the great memories that went with them ever since. So I'm doing this trip partially in memory of my dad, and probably in memory of a lot of other dads like him who must have people who still look back to those early times when honest, hardworking agriculture. But I'm doing it for another reason too. My dad taught me more than just how to drive horses. My mom and dad taught me that there were certain values, there were the right thing to do at certain times, and I was taught that if you are blessed with success, then you have some obligation to give back to the community that helped you become successful. So this trip across America with this hitch is a chance to give back to a community of more than 7 million subscribers who have supported us over the years. This is really as much or more their hitch than ours.
Then the team was loaded on its special semi and headed out on its long trip from northeast Iowa to the trip's starting point at Kennebunkport, Maine. It was the first look at the Atlantic for most of the crew, who took in the local sights and tried to understand the local accents. It took them a while to understand the local folks were talking about horses when they said hosses. Then on April 13th, 1993, a few days after Easter Sunday, the trip officially got underway when the Belgians pranced proudly through the surf of the cool waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Firestone, the most famous horse in this hitch, was hit by a good-sized wave. But as you can see, he kept right on going. From the surf, they headed up over the sand dunes and began their trip west. Way west. Even when it was raining, and it rained a lot during the first few weeks of the trip, the New England scenery was fascinating to the crew, especially its countryside and its quaint, charming towns. People of all ages were waiting and eager to ride. The hitch stopped at senior centers all along the route, fulfilling its mission of pulling for seniors, commemorating the 50th anniversary year of the country's first senior center. And sometimes, when it was too rainy for the folks to come outdoors, David took Firestone or one of the other huge horses indoors, right into the lobby of senior centers and nursing homes. Now, if you watch, you'll note Stoney here even checked in at the reception desk, maybe to see if his name was spelled correctly. These giant horses weigh over a ton each, and their ears nearly touched 8-foot ceilings when they were brought inside. But the residents thoroughly enjoyed these visits, and the horses seemed to relish the attention they received. Knowledgeable people say that horses have a special tolerance for children and elderly people. Stoney provided plenty of evidence of that during this visit.
Oh, pretty, pretty.
Just go like
Oh,
There you go.
Nice horse.
Beautiful Dorothy, huh?
Yeah.
The crew loved the pure white churches along their route as they crossed New England, and the people along the route loved the crew. Folks showed up even on wet days to wave and to ride when they could, and sometimes even invited crew members into their houses for home-cooked meals. When you cover only 10 miles a day, crossing a state line is a pretty big deal, and the crew let out lusty cheers whenever they crossed another border. One of the more memorable days in Massachusetts was the day the hitch crossed the famous French King Bridge, captured in this scene filmed from a helicopter. Note how this docile, well-trained team doesn't flinch when the loud copter swoops right over their heads. And the scenery keeps changing as the hitch keeps heading west, 10 miles a day, 6 days a week, resting only on Sundays. Subscribers to Country Reminisce and other Reiman Publications magazines kept lining the roadways, waiting for a chance to see their hitch and hoping to get a chance to ride. In all, over 46,000 people, most of them seniors, rode the wagon during the 16-month trip. David even explained to them how he drives.
We have 6 reins, 1 per horse. The top rein is always the lead horse. Middle rein is always your swing team. Your bottom rein is always your wheel team. Now, when I want to turn a horse, first thing I got to turn is my lead team. And I cannot let the wheel team know that I'm ready to turn the lead team so they don't all turn in the same motion. You want them to turn almost like in a circle. So when I'm going to do that is I will pull back about 2 inches and then I will pull, and that will bring my lead team over. I always say an inch is about 10 feet because they will take it that fast, especially a quick responsive team like this is. These horses will pretty much go wherever you're going to guide them. You can use voice commands like I always do. If I want them to trot, I'll say team. If I want them to walk, I'll say walk. Team! They're off. Walk! Walk, boys! Now we're down to our walk. The reason that I want them to walk is I want these guys, for this 10 miles that we do each day, to be just as hardy as they can be when we get there. And that means by pulling them back and just kind of letting them be pumped up all the time, it seems like they just wear better. And also, of course, it shows a lot more pride in them than if you just run them and wear them down.
I'm very excited about this trip. We're usually in cars and we're usually going 65 and moving along, and we just kind of fly by things. But I kind of like this slow pace because you can actually see everything in great detail. I always look at the fields around us and see the different crops of corn and grain growing. I love to go past houses and see the little kids out playing in their swings or flopping around in a swimming pool. I love to pass all these vehicles and they slam on their brakes and pull over in the ditch in front of us and start waving.
There's nothing in the world I'd rather do than what I'm doing right now. This is not only showing the horses, it's taking a trip across America and sharing everything with all the people. And after all, it takes all these people to make it happen. And it's just totally awesome.
Also awesome are these 6 beautiful Belgians, especially Firestone, who is regarded as a legend in the draft horse industry. He's the second horse on the right side in the swing position. He's won more awards than many horses win in a lifetime, and he still has 6 to 7 years left to compete. The trip offered David and the crew an opportunity to give people some background on the draft horses and about the contributions of draft horses to the growth of this country, back when horsepower was limited to real horsepower. The trip helped bridge the gap between seniors and children, too, since groups of seniors and school children often turned out at the same time to see the team. David had a chance to tell the children about the days when some of these very seniors drove big horses like this. What life was like back then, how these older people worked to provide many of the things these children enjoy. Through this, the children got some live history lessons, sometimes even getting to help drive the team. If not always quite on course. As the team headed out on its 10-mile walk each day, the crew loaded the gear on the great semi and moved ahead to the next night's stop. Semi-driver Don Garrett explains what's involved each day to get on the road.
First thing we do in the mornings, we get the horses ready to go and hitch on the road. And then we tear down. There's 5 of us that tear down and load the tent, stalls, and all the other equipment that we've got into the truck and trailer. And then we move on to the next stop before the horses get there. We pass the horses on the road, and then we set this up again after we get there, the tent, the trailer, the stalls and everything, and try to be ready for the horses when they arrive. Then we're having fun because we're traveling. We see a new place every day and new people, and it's interesting.
What helped make each day on the road interesting for the crew was the generosity of the people along the way. Farmers often invited, in fact they urged the crew to let the horses enjoy their pastures and barns during the afternoon and evening hours. Some of the local animals obviously found a visit with these huge strangers to be awfully interesting too. And the Belgians, free of their harnesses and responsibilities for a few hours, made the most of these moments, playfully galloping and frisking about the open pastures, often acting more like untrained colts than the highly skilled members of the #1 6-horse hitch in America. Oh, that's old Firestone kicking up his heels there. He even co-authored the book about this trip called The Main Event. A feature of this night's stay at Hancock Shaker Village in Massachusetts was the unique round barn that you see here, which is thought to be a forerunner of barns across the country at the time. And the sun sets on another satisfying, memorable day on the road. Meeting new people daily, Vikki shows a young visitor what she does each morning in readying the team.
We're going to be in the parade here this evening, so I'm just preparing the geldings' manes for them by putting a braid in them with ribbon. The horses are handling this considerably well. In general, they're gaining a lot of muscle. They're holding their weight just beautifully. They seem to have a lot of energy when they get in parades and different kind of social activities where we have a lot of people and a lot of excitement going on. They seem to perk up and get in the spirit of things and realize it's time to put on a show for everybody.
When the crew began hitching up the team each morning, the crowd closed in tighter to see exactly how it's done. Mostly, though, they just wanted to get near this outstanding team that they began regarding as theirs.
Horses are beautiful. Thank you for bringing them. They're a great thing.
That's the most gorgeous setup that I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them.
Wow!
These Belgians are gorgeous. This hitch is just beautiful. It's fantastic. I can't say enough about it.
This is the coolest 4th of July we'll ever have in our lives.
The 4th of July celebration is always a big affair in the small town of Chaffee, New York. But last year's celebration, the locals said, was the best ever, since it featured a 6-horse hitch headed clear across the country and just happened to be in their area at the perfect time. Now, this is what this trip was all about, bringing some good, clean enjoyment to thousands of people across the country by showing and sharing their hitch, the team co-owned by more people than any team in the world, the more than 8 million subscribers to Reiman Publications magazines.
We felt just as good being in the parade tonight as we did in the Pasadena Rose Parade. So these parades are fun, and it takes people like you to make them happen, and we love you. Thank you.
The friendly reception of these small-town folks all along the way made every day seem like the 4th of July to the crew members and to Reiman Publications editors, who often visited and rode with the hitch. After crossing through New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, and the northwestern corner of Pennsylvania, the hitch stepped across the border into Ohio and headed toward the small Amish town of Sugar Creek, where the much-anticipated wedding of David and Vikki took place. Over 15,000 Country and Reminisce subscribers showed up to share in the celebration.
It is very exhilarating. It really is.
Very
Great.
Emotional for me.
Yeah, we got riding horses at home, Morgan's and a quarter, but nothing like this.
Oh, the horses are just great. I used to drive horses that size when I was a kid to home, and I really enjoyed it. And it never got out of my blood, I guess.
It's really more than I expected. I think it's just wonderful. It's a beautiful day to have this. Glad to be a part of it.
We drove all the way from Chaffee, New York, just to come to the wedding.
We came all the way from West Virginia just to see this.
I'm from Elma, New York.
Doylestown, Ohio.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've come from Boston, Massachusetts.
Louisville, Kentucky. Can you believe I came 700 miles to go to this?
From Albany, New York.
Waterloo, Iowa, Northeast Iowa. Our son works for the crew.
We drove down 5.5, 6 hours last night to come to the wedding. The problem was we had trouble finding a motel. We didn't get a motel through 3:45 this morning.
There wasn't a room from Sugar Creek to Canton.
I'm Pete, the best man. I came in from Stockton, California.
I'm Virgil Thompson, the bride's father. We live at Winchester High.
Wilbur Helmuth from Wisconsin, David's brother. This is my uncle Perry Bontrager from Iowa.
Well, I knew David the day he was born from there on. I think a lot of the boy. He was really good with horses. Even as a little boy, he was really good with horses.
Believe it or not, folks, it's still on.
Now you know, Judy, what we're going to do.
I thought I'd just fill you in a little bit of what is the plan today. Well, for number one, thanks for coming out. The wedding is on, and we're getting married this afternoon at 3 o'clock.
Now I waved at everybody. I was hanging out the top of the limo, yelling and waving. So all my horses, everything looks excellent. Yeah, I'll sing. Got all these people now. I'm all hepped up, ready to roll.
Wonder if anybody's here yet. There is?
There's a couple people out there.
Oh, yeah? They're starting to come in then, huh?
A little nervous?
Not really. I guess probably the nervous thing is just about, getting the horses and all the people and all that. As far as the wedding and getting married, piece of cake.
Finally, with a full church and thousands listening to the loudspeakers outside, the long-awaited ceremony got underway.
David Helmuth, will you have this woman to be your wedded wife, to live together in the holy estate of marriage? Will you love her, comfort her, honor and keep her in sickness and in health, and forsaking all others, keeping only to her, so long as you both shall live?
I will.
I, Vikki Lynn Thompson,
I, Vikki Lynn Thompson,
take you, David Helmuth,
take you, David Helmuth,
to be my husband.
to be my husband.
I promise before God
I promise before God
and these friends
and these friends
to be your loving
to be your loving
and faithful wife.
and faithful wife.
The couple sang a duet and sealed their bond with a kiss.
Mr. and Mrs. David and Vikki Helmuth, if you want to
The newlyweds climbed on the wagon and drove over to an adjoining pasture parking area where more than 1,000 guests waited and crowded under a huge tent to share in the outdoor reception.
That is great cake. It's very sweet.
They and publisher Roy Reiman signed hundreds of autographs. The couple had signed dozens of autographs every day of the trip, but this day, Vikki signed Vikki Helmuth for the very first time. Many people brought them country-oriented gifts. The couple headed off for a private reception and dinner with family members that evening, and the very next day, it was back on the road again. They headed through the heart of Holmes County, Ohio, the home of the world's largest Amish community. Over 40,000 Amish people live here, and these hard-working folks have a special love for draft horses. Hundreds of these friendly folks stopped whatever they were doing to come to the cross-country trip route to see these now famous horses up close, and probably to see how these Belgians measured up to their own. The Amish are known for their home cooking, and the crew was invited into several Amish homes to enjoy a home-cooked meal. This one was at the farmhouse of Maudie and Andy Raber, where the multi-course meal included 2 kinds of meat, mashed potatoes and gravy, Maudie's special stuffing, Amish pudding, of course, and a choice of 5 kinds of pies. And the ingredients for nearly everything served, even the mint for the tea, were grown right on the farm. Nowhere during this trip was this hitch more popular than in the Amish areas, especially in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. Some drove buggies more than 20 miles to get to the hitch route. In some areas, they even closed Amish schools for a half day so the children could come to see their hitch. Hundreds of tourists flock to these Amish settlements each year to buy handmade furniture, toys, and colorful quilts, or just to watch these plain people that work in their fields. Their simple, family-centered lifestyle is especially appealing in these fast-paced, high-tech times. Content to let the modern world pass them by, the Amish enjoy a self-reliance and a peace of mind many of us envy and long for.
Amish country is a lot of fun. You know, it brings back a lot of the great historic roots of where these horses come from. I always figure a lot of these horses would have became extinct if it wouldn't have been for the Amish. So I think they really appreciate seeing these great draft horses going through America. The Amish people raise a lot of horses. Yeah, and, they just like them, and they do about anything to help you if you needed help. Yeah, I always say going through America is the easy part, but as many people as we haul, we broke a record the other day. We hauled 540 people in 12 miles. I mean, that's just about stopping at everybody's driveway. And it's just like that all the way along here.
We've got, like David said, lots of people that's been visiting us during the evenings and during the afternoons on the wagon while we've been traveling. I would say probably mostly 70–80% are Amish families. We've still received a few gifts in the last day, since it's even 2 days after the wedding. We're still receiving cards and different items that were made for us, keychains made out of wood and hats and all kinds of souvenirs. And I think it's just great.
The days grew into weeks, weeks grew into months, and the Hitch kept heading west, stopping at senior centers in small towns across Ohio, Indiana, and then Illinois. Special cross-country Hitch days were scheduled in many rural areas to welcome the team and the crew.
Stand right there next to Vikki, that is maybe a one short drive besides the long one that you're going to always remember. I want to take another couple minutes, first of all, to present to you some things of Walnut Creek and typical of this area as a welcome and as a part of your wedding. Here's a whip. I'm not sure if you need that or not, but masked leather. Masked leather designs that for horses, not for people.
Well, folks, this is just another good example of what this trip is all about. I think you probably noticed, for number one, the country Reminisce Hitch, and then it says, "We are pulling for seniors." We are pulling for seniors. And that's what's so good about this whole trip. We have seniors aboard, as well as young kids. And we're trying to get a little more togetherness with the old and the young.
Behind the scenes, the crew put in long days, which often included buying fresh hay from local farmers along the route.
Yes, they would eat probably like 30 pounds of hay a day and about 30 quarts of grain a day. And they would probably, they might drink like 25 to 30 gallons of water a day. And that would depend on, of course, how much they're worked and how hot weather it is out too. The public has really appreciated us. This is probably the biggest thing that's happened to a small town USA.
The crew members became family during the trip and could always count on a good meal after a busy day on the road. The meals were prepared in one of the mobile units by the crew cook, Marlene Thompson, who is also Vicki's mother.
I came along on the trip largely because I really like the Hitch. I am just horse crazy, always have been. And I help load and unload subscribers and people. I really enjoy that because especially the seniors, they're so overwhelmed by the Hitch. There seems to be a bond between this Hitch and seniors, and I really enjoy that part of it.
This is quite a hitch, I'd say.
I think they're beautiful, and it was well worth my time coming down to see them.
Oh, I think this is wonderful. I'm really excited. Really excited. I'm so glad you came through here.
We had to come back again today. I had to bring Mom and Dad back out to see them.
And I really enjoy seeing the horses. I was brought up with work horses. And Dad would always use 3-horse hitches a lot to plow and to run the wheat binder and things like that.
When I was on the farm, I would get my left leg to have a horse like that.
As you can see, rural folks love these horses for a variety of reasons. For most of the seniors, they love them for the fond memories they revive. As the Hitch continued west through Indiana and then Illinois, people kept track of its progress through regular updates in Country and Reminisce magazines, as well as farm and ranch living. They even dialed the special Hitch hotline for up-to-the-minute reports of the Hitch's whereabouts. Some families told the crew they drove over 500 miles to the Hitch route to see their team personally.
We have followed this since we learned about it in the magazine, and just never dreamed I would have the opportunity.
Whenever do you get a couple on their honeymoon inviting you to take the whole world with them on their honeymoon?
As the Hitch and crew reached western Illinois, they had covered over 1,380 miles and looked forward to a milestone, the day they'd walk across the Mississippi River. That long-awaited day finally arrived on a cool gray morning in mid-October.
Well, today we're going to be crossing the Mississippi River. Of course, that's something that we've been looking forward to for a long time. Some people think it's the halfway point. It really isn't. We're not halfway there yet, but we're getting closer. And it's one of them things. The horses are holding up well, and I guess that's a good feeling because this is something that we talked about for a long time. I guess I'm pretty proud of this little 3-year-old here. Broke him right on the road, and now he's going to cross the Mississippi. A year ago, if I would have told him that, he would have thought I'm lying to him. Morning, folks. Good to see you. Today is a very special day, as I guess every day is, but of course to us, we've been talking about the Mississippi for quite some time, and I feel the Mississippi River has probably been one of the most talked about topics in the year. And then I want to do something in the little town of Neota just before we get to the bridge. I think we're going to have some of them people, all of them are pretty well evacuated, and I have some people out there looking for these people that live there, and I'd like for them to ride with us across the river. We did hear about all the flood victims all summer long. We all had our thoughts with you as times were rough out here for you.
As you heard David explain, a few area people who suffered the worst flood damage were selected and given the special privilege of riding the hitch wagon across the Mississippi River Bridge.
Which house did you live in?
Right on down here, where there's where my Buick's sitting in the driveway.
Well,
I'm not living
the first
there.
time that I came into this town, I said, whenever we come in here, I hope that all the people that used to live here, we could at least share a little time with them to go across the bridge.
Thank you.
The mighty Mississippi made a lot of history this year, and I know a lot of you had to suffer with it, but it just shows what kind of strength that you have, and you're still surviving, and you bet.
Takes a lot.
I agree. And I want to
Oh man, would you please just look at the watermarks on the homes and businesses of these unfortunate people.
sadness, I guess, to all the people that lived over here in the little town of Neota. Many of them just lost their homes in the flood, and I think all of the whole United States' thoughts was with you. But of course, some of you had to suffer with it, but I see you all survived it well, so that's great.
We were lucky. We didn't lose any lives.
And then they came to the bridge.
It's October the 15th, and we are going to cross the Mississippi. They call it the mighty Mississippi, and I guess it was pretty mighty this year. To this day, right now, we went approximately 1,380 miles, and we have about 14,600 riders. That just kind of gives you an idea of how many people rode with us.
If anyone would have told me 2 weeks ago I was going to be doing this, I wouldn't have believed it.
This is something, folks, that I've been looking forward to for a long time. We're parked in the middle of the bridge, the Great Mississippi. So far, it's been awesome. The Great Mississippi, we've heard about it a lot, and it's very special to us to take this privilege with all these great people that are riding with us each and every day. with these champion Belgian draft horses as we go across America. And I think there's one thing that we need to know. If it wouldn't have been for God's help and all the great people of America, this would have been impossible. And we love each and every one that comes out and sees us, and God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you.
Thank you.
The toll taker on the bridge probably thought he'd seen everything until today and seemed a little puzzled what he should charge.
Oh,
he decided on a budget price of just a quarter, basing it on the rig rather than the horsepower.
Hey!
You know how to work this.
David let out a cheer when he came off the west end of the bridge. He was back home in his home state of Iowa, and many Iowans showed up to let him know that they were glad to see him again.
We brought my 80-year-old mother down, and it was great. Just like my aunt said, it was like riding in a Cadillac. I'm looking at the souvenir book, the country's Reminisce Hitch. I just got it, so I'm real anxious, but I have all of the issues from country, and I've been reading about their whole trip.
When they pulled in, I got pictures. The first two pictures that I have are going to be in our Roseville Independent next week. They borrowed them. I started taking pictures all through our trip. Took pictures in Raritan, and when they left Raritan, this morning we met them in Lomax, Dallas City, and I've got them coming across the bridge in my pocket. They're not finished up yet.
People and animals of all sizes turned out to meet the hitch. Just look at this interesting comparison of horsepower. Hardly a day went by that David wasn't interviewed by radio, television, and newspaper reporters, and each report brought out more people to see the now famous hitch.
I know a lot of you are going to ask me, what are you going to do this winter?
As David explained to this group, the trip up to this point had taken longer than expected, and the fall weather was turning unseasonably cold for both the crew and the riders. While we'd planned to make it from Maine to California in one continuous journey, we were forced to switch to our contingency plan to avoid traveling through the Midwest during the cold winter months. So, at Centerville, Iowa, David explained we'd implant a golden horseshoe, a la the Golden Spike, to mark the progress west at that point. Then haul the team to San Diego, California. There, they would begin walking back along the same route as originally planned, heading back to Centerville. The folks in Centerville were delighted to hear of these plans, of course, and immediately began organizing some special events for when the team reached there. Meanwhile, the hitch continued west across Iowa, stopping in more small towns and at more senior centers and nursing homes along the way.
These gentle giants, they call them, have traveled all across the heartland, and they were the top awarded team in 1992.
Many people brought their parents, even in wheelchairs, and some became emotional when they petted their horses.
The oldest person that's touched one of these horses was a lady in Hardin County, Ohio. She's 109 years old. So think about it, you're only as old as you feel, because she came right out and touched him and she said, he's warm. And I want any of you that want to come out here and touch one of these horses, you're sure welcome to. That's why we brought them here. We're very proud of these horses, we're very proud of what we're doing, but the most proud thing that I like about it is because we can share it with America. We can share it with our school kids, we can share it with all our seniors.
And that's what's so good about this whole trip. We have seniors aboard as well as young kids. And we're trying to get a little more togetherness with the old and the young.
The crowds, The curiosity and the questions continued day after day.
What do you do when it rains?
Well, what we do when it rains is, I don't want to be smart about it, but we let it rain. We have our umbrellas with us, and also we use raincoats and rain gear. Since we left Kennebunkport, Maine on April 13th, we've only had 8 days of rain. It rained 13 days when we were in Kennebunkport, but after we finally got started, it was not bad at all. And we never start out in the morning that's really raining bad. But if it rains midstream, naturally we have to go to our next destination because wherever I had picked out to camp that night, that's where we got to keep going.
As the Hitch continued on its way west along Iowa's grain fields, showing late fall colors, preparations continued at Centerville for an appropriate welcome as well as an appropriate send-off to California. Even Centerville's high school band began practicing a few songs that fit the occasion. There it is, the city limits of the town of Centerville. Local riders came out to meet the Hitch, and even the local bank welcomed the Hitch on its marquee. Several thousand people were on hand to greet the team and share in the fun. And while it had been cold up to this point, the weather cooperated and it was a perfect fall day. The local mayor and other dignitaries welcomed the crew.
That's what makes it well worth it.
You know, money don't buy.
David responded and thanked everyone for turning out. And then one of Firestone's horseshoes, gold-plated for the occasion, was implanted at the edge of the town square, facing west, to indicate the exact point reached so far in the team's walk from Kennebunkport, Maine
thank you, and we're
to
going to head
Iowa.
for the fairgrounds, and we love you. God bless you.
With that, the horses were loaded in their custom-designed semi. The crew's quarters followed, and the Hitch headed on its long ride to San Diego. It stopped about every 100 miles along the way to let people get to meet the horses that would be walking back along that same route soon. Talk about a change of climate. The horses loved the California sunshine, and for many crew members, it was the first time they'd seen the West Coast as well. Then it was a time to make it officially a sea-to-sea trip. And of course, this was somewhat of a spectacle, even for Californians who've seen just about everything. Splashing out of the water, the team headed east, way east, beginning their walk back to that golden horseshoe in Centerville, Iowa, to complete the first ever coast-to-coast walk by a 6-horse hitch.
We're in San Diego. It's beautiful. The weather's nice. What a splash in the ocean. The horses just love the water. The waves were just nice and warm. And it's almost like the horses wanted to do it more than what, they didn't want to get out. They just wanted to keep going. I think what I really liked about it is we shared such a great experience with so many people that never seen these big horses, especially right in their backyards. And I think that's a great thing that we're giving back to them.
I love it. It's God's country out here. All the beautiful palm trees and the ocean. It's just great. Horses love it. The crew loves it. We're just happy to be here.
Definitely made history today.
On board this day was another draft horse driver.
You need a break, Dave?
I tell you what, let's make it a little bit for the women this afternoon. I'm gonna give the lines to my wife, Vikki. And I'm gonna have you get up here. Just come up here, PJ, and sit right here.
Now, I drive a team of Belgians. I have my own team, Barney and Clyde. And in April of 1990, I went to Stockton, California, and I took a one-day seminar with David, and he taught me how to drive four.
How you like driving them? Do they pull hard?
They pull hard.
So,
My
one of
goal
David's
is
prior
to,
students
get a four
got to
up
drive
together and
Country's
go from
Reminisce
San Diego
Hitch.
to San Francisco.
As the team headed along a California highway, they walked below a billboard featuring some other kind of horses, sponsored by some other kind of sponsor. Hey, I mean, who ever heard of them anyway? While the bulk of this trip was along rural roads, there was no way to get from the crowded beach area to the rural areas east other than right along some busy California highways. As they continued east during December, David explained just how he regularly checks out the road ahead.
I always do my, I call it front running in the afternoon, normally when I get back from the hitch, and it normally is, usually I leave about 2 o'clock to do the next 10 or 20 miles. But once a week I like to run about 70 miles a week just to kind of get an idea at least what territory I'm coming into. Of course, when we left Kennebunkport and headed west, it was a lot easier finding places. But out here in the desert area, we're going to have to rough it quite often because people are going to understand why we have all our vehicles self-contained, because I tell you what, a lot of these places you won't even find electricity for about 40 miles to some of the towns. So this is probably one of the last towns that we'll see for a while. So gives you an idea what it really is like on the road. I got a contact down here, a feed store. It sounded like that's probably going to end up being the place we're going to stay at. And it looks like their parking lot's big enough, so this will probably be it. Our horses, you know, when they're working hard, we feed them 4 times a day now. And the reason for that is to get their energy going and keep their energy up. And as you can see, the horses, you know, they're definitely keeping up in good shape. But it's because we feed excellent alfalfa hay, about 30 pounds a day. Out here in California, it's known to have excellent hay. And of course, tell you what, this hay here looks real good. And how you can really tell is whenever hay has got all these good leaves on it, that leaf is excellent protein. Now if a bale would just have this on it, that is stems. You would never want to buy hay that just is stemmy like this, because horses won't like it. But if you do this and you get all this good alfalfa, see, it's even got some of the blue leaves in it yet, and that's excellent hay. That's about 18% protein. A lot of people don't like feeding horses alfalfa, but if you show them and you want energy, you're going to have to feed them a lot of protein. And this is where you get it, a great bale of alfalfa like this. So, and also they have the grain and shavings that we need, so this is perfect. I mean, we can't beat a nice place like this to stop over and they have our feed, hay, and shavings. We're set.
Christmas Eve 1993 found the crew near the Mexican border. But that didn't stop them from having a private Christmas dinner, an exchange of gifts, and a special toast right along the road. The crew loved the scenery of the Southwest, especially the mountains and the sunsets as they slowly worked their way across the desert to New Mexico. The crowds were a little thinner here in this sparsely populated area, but their interest was just as keen. Especially when everyone's favorite horse, Firestone, came into view. Is that a handsome horse or what? As they did everywhere else along the route, the visitors quietly soaked up the atmosphere, took dozens of pictures, and watched the crew hitch up the team.
All right. Well, good morning, folks. Thanks a lot for coming out here in this desert area.
And desert it was. The crew members from New England and the Midwest said they heard sounds in camp at night they'd never heard before. They and the horses loved the warm weather during January, February, and March as they slowly inched eastward across the map, now having walked over 2,000 miles since leaving Maine nearly a year ago.
We're just north of Socorro, New Mexico. We have traveled since December 13th as we left San Diego, 1,100 miles. And of course, today is pretty much the last day of March, so it kind of gives you an idea how long it took us. I think what's so unique about this is you can see a real tall, that's a big mountain over there, then you see a canyon, then you see desert, and then you go across the road over here, and now we get into a lot more marshland, and that's really a marsh down there along the Rio Grande. In fact, that's a wildlife refuge down there. So it's pretty special, and then of course you go 5,000 feet up again, you see a mountain with snow on top. So there's about 5 different scenes you can get right in this area.
What a way to see America, huh? From the seat of a wagon moving just 10 miles a day. On some days, David said even that seems too fast. It's always nice to run into old friends when you're on a trip. And this was the case when the route took David near the New Mexico farm of a draft horse owner that he competed against at various shows over the years.
The Jordan Perriot family has been having draft horses and showed in competitions, a lot of the shows that we used to show in when we won our top award. And what I'd like to do today is, Perriot is a good friend of mine, and he's going to bring his 6-horse hitch out. And we're going to take 2 top 6-horse hitches out there and do a little show performance. And I guess the neat thing about it is, let's see how these guys can perform 2,200 miles later, because that's how many miles they got under their belt. And of course, this is still the same 6-horse hitch that we have been using all along. And one of the great horses in the world is this man right here. This is Chip. He's the best lead horse I've ever driven. As far as I'm concerned, the best lead horse I've ever seen go. And he'll go out here today and put a performance on that's just unbelievable. And you want to watch his legs, the movement, his style, his headset. Everything about this horse is just totally awesome. And of course, the others are great horses too. But he is the lead horse, and the lead horse is born. You can't make a lead horse. This Perriot 6-horse hitch over here is one of them hitches that I always admired when I seen them come in the show ring. They came a long ways in the last 5 years because they learned when they go in the show ring what it takes and what it needs. And of course, you'll see today, they got a pretty stylish outfit. A lot of people think because they're big horses, they can't move. And I want the audience that are out there performing, you just notice the style and the movement and the drive you get out of these big, giant Belgian horses. And that's what makes this whole thing so exciting for people watching, because it's just such a thundering feeling, and it's earth-shaking.
After putting the horses through the paces, Jordan gave David a tour of the barn where he stores and restores yesterday's wagons and equipment.
For all the great wagons that been in movies and stuff.
Right. It's a place to store them.
Wow, you know what? I've never seen one of them. You can't just walk anywhere and find this kind of wagon. I mean, it's, you know, it's very rare. So this is the milk wagon.
Right, this was what they used to deliver the milk door to door in them days.
1915. How long did it take you to accumulate all this stuff?
Oh, probably 15, 20 years.
Wow, I remember this, the old gang plow.
Yeah, you probably rode on one of them a lot, haven't you?
Yes, I did, and I flew off to sea a lot of times. There's only one thing that happens when you put this thing in gear and you put it and you hit a rock, off you go. I didn't realize, you know, how many people really do remember when they used to farm with all this stuff. Because, you know, if it's not brought to their attention, you kind of forget it.
Right. It's good, I think, that you're bringing it back and that the young and the old can get together and reminisce over it, really.
If the young kids don't ever get introduced to this, they'd never know that it was ever even available.
Right, they never knew what happened or how it came to be.
Right. Well, thanks a lot for everything. I tell you what, it's been a great thing.
Good luck.
I think you got a good hitch together. It was fun going out there today and seeing them two powerful sixes go around. And the only difference is I got to keep going across America touring, and you keep doing the show.
The horses always came first on this trip, and time was always taken to give them the best of care. That included a new set of shoes applied by an experienced farrier, Glenn Chris, every few weeks. We'll let Glenn explain how the job's done.
Well, I've been shoeing for 14 years now, since I got out of high school, and I'm the 8th generation in my family, along with my cousin and my brother. And there's 11 of us shoeing. We're out of Connecticut. We're coming out to do these about every 4.5 to 5 weeks because the mileage they're doing, they're burning the shoes off quicker than I've ever seen before. Here's an old shoe that is 4.5 weeks old. You can see the difference right here compared to the new shoe right here. First, we'll bring a horse in. You got to cut the clinches, the nails, the top of the nails that's holding the shoe on. Pull the shoe off, and you pair the foot out. Make sure there's nothing wrong with the foot. Look for stone bruises or anything else that could be wrong. So once the shoe's off, you pair the foot out, you give it a thorough inspection, then you cut the foot down. And the foot's got to be level, but it's also got to be correct too. Some horses may be pigeon-toed, some may toe out, some may grow heel on one foot, no heel on the other foot. So they got to be even when you get done. So once you get the foot cut down, then you get a new shoe, which requires a forge. We'll heat the shoe up, fit it to the foot, and then cut a new pad for it and nail the shoe on. All these shoes right here are made back at our shop in Connecticut, and we're always pounding on iron back home, even when we're shoeing other people's horses. The forges are always going, and in between horses we'll make some shoes up, simply because these horses are wearing shoes out so fast.
You saw that rubber pad applied between the shoe and the foot on each horse? Well, David says with that, these horses feel like they're wearing sneakers. And by the way, listen, for you youngsters watching this film, don't be concerned about those nails you saw Glenn pound into those hoofs. The nails actually attach the shoe and are driven near the edge of the hoof, where there's no more feeling than you have in the edge of your toenail. Aren't they something? You talk about poetry in motion. After more than 2,300 miles, these horses are still going down the road with their powerful legs moving like a sewing machine. On and on they went, northeast across New Mexico, following spring north, then into Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado. The horses were given a breather as often as they wanted, and riders climbed aboard even in isolated areas.
We accidentally took this road and was so surprised to see this team, and I thought, well, this is a chance of my lifetime to see them. And as we came on this, well, I saw the horses wagon up ahead. When I got up here, oh my gosh, it's a 6-horse hitch from Roy Reiman's, and how am I going to get a picture or anything? And then when you called from your seat and asked about would I like a ride, why I jumped at that.
Well, welcome aboard.
Well, I'm from Iowa and not too far from Zeering, where there's been a lot of history made so far as horse hitches, but I'm full of questions.
That's all right, that's what we're here for.
How do you get the feed for the horses? Do you have a truck or something that...
We have a barn on wheels and a house on wheels. And of course the house, that's where we have our cook, and she does all our home cooking. But as far as the feed, hay and grain, we can haul 3,000 pounds of grain on top of the semi. And of course hay, we have another trailer and we can have about 2 weeks of supply with that. Now the biggest problem is, when we're out here in the desert, you've probably seen on the way out here, that sometimes the towns are about 60 miles apart. And, and we've had to go 30 miles just to get water. But we can handle right at 1,000 gallons of water. That's how much room we got to carry water with us. So everything is 100% self-contained. Hi, how you doing?
Nice looking outfit. This is just a bonus on my trip. This has been tremendous.
The hitch caught everyone's eye. One day, in an isolated area, an Amtrak train actually made an unscheduled stop when the engineer spotted the hitch. Our crew was amazed as passengers got off, snapped pictures of the team, and visited with crew members about the trip. By midsummer, the hitch was in Kansas. The weather got awfully hot, and David slowed the pace, covering shorter distances than usual. As a result, it took more than a month to diagonally cross the Sunflower State. Then they crossed the corner of Nebraska, the northeastern corner of Missouri, and finally they were back in Iowa on the last 100 miles of their cross-country journey.
We're kind of anxious. The last 100 miles have been kind of anxious to get to the end when you get this close, but we're kind of ready to celebrate for a week in Centerville. And
it's the second to the last day, and you know, I feel great. I mean, I really do. It's I'm kind of sad and kind of excited, I guess. There's so many things that you remember about the trip. We have traveled through country that a lot of folks have never seen. And we've had rattlesnakes. One day, this horse right here, Bobby, we were traveling along in Colorado, and all of a sudden he just took off. And I looked at Vikki and I said, what in the world's wrong with him? And we were pulling him back. And all of a sudden the guy pointed out, it's a rattler, it's a rattler. And I tell you, this rattler was coiled up, just ready to strike again. But luckily he missed, and we got out of that one. But one experience that I would say is the deepest in our mind that we will never forget. We were in Kansas. We happened to be on top of a hill, which is good. That night, about 5 o'clock, I thought it looked awful cloudy up north. And I told the guys, I said, I tell you, there's a storm coming, and I said, we got to get everything buttoned up real quick. We took every motor home we had left and took it around the tent. We put the curtains up. By the time we got the last curtain up, wind started coming, and I'm talking 85 miles an hour to 110 mile an hour wind. We were under there. The harness just took off, and it just blew it right out in the open. It was raining, hailing. I've never been in an experience lightning. It was unreal. And some of my crew members said, we're not staying in here. I said, whoa, the horses are in here, we're staying. I said, we're not going anywhere. Where are you going to go? We're out in the middle of nowhere. The horses were really not spooked, and I'll tell you why, because I think they thought, if we're dumb enough to be in there with them, it must be okay.
They were fine.
But the wind was so strong that it lifted the stalls up, and them stalls are heavy. So we tied the horses to the stalls and the tent to the stalls and anchored them in. Everybody was soaking wet. The rain was just flying right through the barn, and you know, the tornado went within a couple miles from us. The next morning, you know, they couldn't believe that we're still there and that the tent's still there. And I tell you, it was the hardest mission of the whole trip. It was the best, and I tell you what, I had the best crew in America when that happened that night.
See that sign? Just 24 miles to Centerville. Just 24 miles to make history. The reception and reaction from people along the road continued. It was just miles of smiles wherever this hitch went.
This whole trip has just been amazing. Thousands of people told me that this is impossible to do. I've had horsemen that have been in business for a long time. I've known them since I was 12 years old. They've told me I'm going to go through 100 horses. And we've only had one loss of the whole trip, and that was a horse named Jack. And it happened while we were not on the road. We were actually in Audubon, Iowa at the fairgrounds. And his name was Jack, left-hand wheel horse. He died of a heart attack. He was actually born with a heart murmur. So, you know, it's one of them things. Like the vet said, he would have died at home or wherever you were. It was just, in fact, it was lucky that he made it probably 9-10 years that he did. We have one thing left, and that's we'll always have his memories and the pictures and stuff like that. So that's the only tragic thing that happened. So that's better than going through 100 horses like some people said that we're going to do.
For the crew's last night on the road, it was time for a prayer of thanks and one last dinner together.
Tonight, I wanted to make our last night for us being together as a dinner.
For us, and thank you for this, the memories and all the...
There was even a special hitch cake supplied by one of the local ladies. People brought the crew food all along the route, from just picked apples to just baked pies. But this cake, decorated with 6 chocolate horses, was a special treat. Later, there was still one more interview for David and
They didn't only win the nation, they're the only American hitch that's ever walked ocean to ocean, about 3,500 miles, giving 46,000 people rides.
On the final morning, August 12th, in a barn just outside Centerville, Vikki braided the horses' manes one last time.
And we went through a lot of Maine rules.
Local folks came early to watch the preparations. Then, like the coach of a winning team, David led the horses out of the barn on this final morning. He told the gathering crowd what they could expect and got ready to move out.
Point out, have them come on. That way it's fair for everyone.
This is for the camera. Congratulations.
Thank you.
One more mile.
With that, dapperly attired in matching violet western suits, David and Vikki struck out over their last mile, the last of over 3,600 miles they'd driven this hitch. And the people were eagerly waiting, more than 5,000 of them, ready to welcome them back home. David circled Centerville's large town square twice in an extended victory lap to give everyone a good look at this history-making team. Then yelled whoa to his team one last time and celebrated the end of this trip of trips with a whoop and a salute with his hat. It was sort of a Hollywood moment. The band played, various dignitaries spoke, including publisher Roy Reiman.
When I came up with this wild idea of taking a 6-horse hitch across the country 2 years ago, people told me it was impossible. But David being David, it took about 3 minutes when he said, wow, that's the wildest thing I've ever heard of. Let's do it. And we did it. Then we did it. We did it.
David, choking with emotion now and then, shared his feelings with the crowd.
America. At least 40,000 people rode with us. And I've never felt so proud of doing something with America and all the people that were involved as I do today.
it's kind of been that way all the way through. So I really want to thank every one of you for praying for us for this special trip and staying behind us all the way. Thank you.
The ceremony ended with placing another of Firestone's gold-plated shoes at the edge of the town square, this time facing east to indicate the exact spot where the historic trip was completed on August 12th, 1994. The 16-month, 3,600-mile trip was finally over. But David was still in for a big surprise from his crew. What a good time they had. The crowds lingered around Centerville, savoring the moment, watching special draft horse demonstrations. Country's Reminisce Hitch, the team co-owned by over 8 million Reiman Publications subscribers, made history and gave a lot of lives a lift. God bless this great country of ours, and God bless each of our subscribers for the part they played in making this trip possible.